Saw dudes, I just released Oberon Prime's dedicated build guide, and to say he's strong is quite the understatement. The GOAT Warframe recently received a massive makeover, and it made him incredibly strong and fun to play. His kit remains mostly the same, but each of his abilities was tweaked in a way that allows them to remain relevant in the game's current state. To make a long story short, Oberon Prime can one-shot most enemies on command with minimal setup and missions. Revenant might just have a run for his money. Enough yapping, let's get started. The Oberon Prime build on screen was featured in the dedicated build video. The helmet ability chosen for this run was Roar, since it increases the radial damage of Smite. In the Aura slot, we have Brief Respite for its shield gating capabilities. Power Drift increases ability strength, helping Oberon reach breakpoints for Smite damage. Alternatively, you can use Cutting Drift, since it will increase ability range and increase the effective damage radius of Smite, while also helping with Hallowed Ground, Roar, and Reckoning. Prime Continuity and Prime Flow increase ability duration and maximum energy respectively. Umbrella Intensify and Blind Rage increase ability strength, which is pivotal for Smite's damage when considering the use of Roar. The ability efficiency loss from Blind Rage isn't an issue thanks to Arcane Universal Fallout, Violet Archon Shards, and Archon Stretch. Speaking of which, Archon Stretch, Augur Reach, and Overextended drastically increase ability range. Archon Stretch has the added benefit of regenerating 2 energy per second for 5 seconds when an ability applies an electricity proc to an enemy. This can be activated through companions. The final mod is Smite Infusion, which increases outgoing weapon damage. The mod allows Smite to be held on cast, creating a wave of energy traveling outward from the user that temporarily grants the caster and nearby allies additional radiation damage to all attacks. The buff adds radiation damage to weapons in addition to the IPS and elemental mods. As already mentioned, Roar is the helmet ability for this build, and is subsumed over Renewal. Renewal loses value thanks to Reckoning spawning health orbs and Arcane Universal Fallout. The extra damage from Roar helps with Smite's AoE one-shot damage and damage over time applied from weapons. The Arcane combo I ran with for the run is also the same as the one I recommended in the dedicated build guide. Arcane Universal Fallout is a match made in heaven for Oberon, since all of his abilities on this build apply radiation procs, which can cause universal orbs to drop on enemy kills. This helps a ton with energy economy and makes Smite easier to spam. Molt Augmented increases ability strength once again, and helps with all of Oberon's abilities. I'm tired of saying it, but ability strength helps with Smite's damage potential and is prioritized in endurance missions. For the run, I use the same Archon Shards as I recommended in the dedicated build guide. I use 1 Tauforge Amber Shard, 2 Tauforge Violet Shards, and 2 Tauforge Topaz Shards. The Amber Shard increased casting speed and was essential to the damage rotation of the build. The Violet Shards were attuned for an equilibrium passive, which synergized with Reckoning, which caused health orbs to drop from killed enemies. The Topaz Shards directly increase the percentage health damage dealt by Smite, bringing the AoE damage closer to 100% of current HP for one-shotting. Then there is the Parazon. Power Drain increases the ability strength of the next ability cast by 50% upon executing a Mercy Kill. Out of Sight provides some safety, blinding enemies within an 18-meter radius upon performing a Mercy Kill. Finally, Blood for Life grants a 100% chance to drop a health orb on a Mercy Kill, which works well with the Violet Archon Shards. Keep in mind that the Parazon was barely used throughout the run. The primary weapon was Cedo Prime, simply because it was easy to use as a damage dealer and primer. The build focuses on applying viral procs with the alt fire and cleaning up enemies with the primary fire. Roar and Smite Infusion increase the outgoing damage by a ton and make the weapon perfect for clearing trash mobs, while Smite handles the HVTs. Roar also plays well with Hunter Munition slash procs, but it's not really necessary since Smite just kills everything. In the secondary slot, I ran Epitaph Prime, since it served as a dedicated primer weapon. Truth be told, the weapon was not used that much. I modded it to be another viral primer in case Cedo Prime wasn't up to snuff. The Force Cold procs came in handy when trying to nuke enemies with Smite, and the large explosion radius was amazing for priming. Because Oberon's Hallowed Ground prevents status effects, the stagger effect on shots within close range wasn't an issue. The melee weapon I used was Praedos with the evolutions of Drifting Grace, Shockwave Synergy, Evolved Ascension, and Universal Readiness. It was only used for increasing parkour velocity and movement speed. Despite being a strong weapon, I didn't find much use for it throughout the run thanks to Smite and Cedo Prime. I used a Panzer Vulpaphyla once again for my companion. Viral Quills primed enemies for Smite on top of Cedo Prime and Epitaph Prime. Martyr Symbiosis added another layer of survivability on top of Righteous Negation. Panzer Devolution makes the Panzer immortal and keeps the bonuses from Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond active at all times. Mystic Bond allows Oberon to cast an ability for free when the Panzer uses an ability with cooldowns 5 times. This cuts down the energy expenditure a ton for Oberon and makes spamming all of his abilities much easier. Scent Deconstruct allows for more health orbs to spawn, all of which get converted into energy thanks to the Violet Archon Shards. Tenacious Bond and Reinforced Bond increase crit damage and weapon fire rate respectively. Calculated Redirection increases the Panzer shield capacity to keep Reinforced Bond active at all times. Primed Animal Instinct and Fetch are quality of life mods. The claw build is the same as always. The most important mod on this build is Shocking Claws, which can apply electricity procs to enemies and proc the energy regeneration passive from Archon Stretch. The rest of the mods are used to increase the outgoing damage from the Panzer's melee attacks and make it more effective at killing weaker enemies. Madurai is the default focus school for level cap Void Cascade. Void Strike and Void Fuel were used for Thrax units after their physical form was one-shot by Smite. Phoenix Talons was only used for buffing Cedo Prime's damage output. Power Transfer increased the casting speed of all of Oberon's abilities, making it easier to cycle through enemies and groups. Sling Strength increases ability strength for Smite and Roar, making it easier to one-shot. And it was very easy to proc between Exilizer spawns. The amp I used was a standard 147, also known as a Certus Brace, Raplac Prism, and Fat Scaffold. This is the amp I always use, and I highly recommend you try it out for level cap runs. I use Magus Cloud, Magus Lockdown, Eternal Eradicate, and Eternal Onslaught as my operator arcanes. Let's go over the run. This run was not without its issues, and the most noticeable one came from an odd casting delay between Smite and the rest of Oberon's kit. It showed up enough times that I couldn't just write it off as a one-off interaction. Anytime I tried to cast Smite after laying down Hallowed Ground, refreshing Roar, or firing off Reckoning, the ability would hesitate. I'd be spamming the key repeatedly, waiting for the cast to go through, and nothing would happen. That sort of interruption breaks the flow of the run, especially in Cascade, where killing speed keeps the rotations clean. I still don't know if it was a bug, an animation lock, or some unintended quirk, but it was more annoying than anything else I dealt with during the run. Smite's target selection also proved unreliable at moments when reliability mattered most. In theory, it's supposed to prioritize the strongest target in a group, which is perfect. Having a big health pool means that the damage number coming out is massive, but sometimes it looked at a fully armored heavy unit and decided a butcher 2 steps away was somehow a greater threat. When that happened, the projectile that hit the nearby targets wasn't nearly enough to wipe them out, and then I got shot down. I needed a pack of enemies cleared instantly, and instead they got to live through 2 more Smite casts when it decided to work correctly. That said, when Smite was working as intended, it was incredibly strong. Groups were getting one-shot with almost no setup. Most of the time, all I had to do was fire a Cedo Prime glaive at a crowd or pop off 2 Epitaph Prime shots to coat everything in viral. That was enough to prime them for flattening. And honestly, there were plenty of moments where my Panzer handled the viral priming for me, and I could skip straight to using Smite without touching a primer at all. It made the whole routine incredibly effortless, which helped keep the pacing tight. Hallowed Ground carried survivability in a way that felt almost unfair. Standing inside of it meant status effects didn't exist anymore. Toxin, electric, heat, basically any damage over time effect that would normally chip away at my health or interrupt my movement was just completely wiped out the moment I recast the ability. Being immune to knockdowns kept me from losing momentum, which is incredibly important in a mission type where tempo matters. Xmas units might as well have not been there, because all of their attacks would not knock me down or apply a damaging status effect. The added chaos from enemies turning on each other with the radiation procs took even more pressure off of Oberon, and it made engagements feel calm and controlled. Then there is Smite Infusion. Though the augment wasn't the star of the show, it had a lot of potential for other weapons. Roar and Smite Infusion together can make nearly any weapon a force to be reckoned with, especially weapons that can receive a valence bonus. Having radiation damage on the weapon from the augment means that you can use a valence override for a different element and increase self-priming. Reckoning tied everything together better than I expected. The armor strip was reliable, the brief crowd control was just enough to keep enemies in place while I repositioned, and the extra health orb drops rounded out the whole sustaining loop. Since Blind Rage was in the build, ability costs weren't friendly, but the synergy between Violet Archon Shards, Arcane Universal Fallout, Archon Stretch, and Mystic Bond kept energy flowing smoothly. Without renewal in the setup, the health orbs actually mattered for once. They let me top off after any stray elemental proc got through before I refreshed Hallowed Ground again. Together, these pieces made the loadout feel nearly self-operating. In the end, every part of Oberon's kit had a clear purpose, and nothing felt redundant. He handled scaling almost effortlessly and maintained pressure so consistently that the run lost any real sense of danger. By the later rotations, I wasn't improvising or scrambling to stay alive, except when I had an animation lock. I was just walking through the mission, clearing everything in my path without much thought because Smite handled everything for me. As strong as the build was, it almost became too smooth for its own good. Oberon starts killing so efficiently with one ability that I found myself getting bored. Can I recommend Oberon Prime post-rework? 100%. It's hard to put down a frame that has good one-shot potential with minimal setup and support the team in so many ways. Smite is easy to use and can buff the team with Smite Infusion. Hallowed Ground is perfect for giving the entire team status immunity and crowd controls enemies well. Renewal, if kept on the build, is good for healing teammates and providing armor for lower level survival. Finally, Reckoning strips armor and makes every enemy squishy as marshmallows. All things considered, Oberon's rework left him in a really good position. He does require a bit of investment to get good performance, but it's well worth it. If you need a DPS frame masquerading as a support, Oberon is for you. I hope this level cap video helped. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching and happy farming. Stay safe.
the lesson ends.